The movie starts with a sweeping vista of the city of New York, with folk driving around and going about their daily lives amid the beauty of the landmarks and hustle and bustle of the central business district in Manhattan. Lara, a young executive, is with her senior colleague speaking with her clients in a tall office building, excited to start a deal between their company and JoJo's Coffee, a big coffee chain that will be taking on a new contract with them. When the client leaves, Lara high-fives her colleague Joel, who is proud and happy that she managed to close such a big deal. She then lays out all the plans for him, explaining that she's got everything set up for her to be absent the following week. Joel scowls and tries to convince her to drop her vacation time, but Lara insists she needs to go. Her recently deceased aunt owns a tea shop in a small town called Kissing Falls, and she has to help handle all the paperwork quickly, as she's the executor of the will. She shows her disdain for the small town, citing its fame as the hummingbird capital of New England, and assures Joel she'll be back before the deal closes. She's just going to sign some documents for the lawyers and ensure that everything is correctly handled. The next day, Lara drives into Kissing Falls, and we see it's a very small town indeed, a typical sleepy Connecticut suburb without much excitement. She drums her fingers on the wheel as she takes in the sights and spots a coffee shop on her right, pulling over to fill up her flask. It's a pretty building with creeping ivy climbing up pillars on the frontage and a few residents sitting on tables outside enjoying some peace and quiet. She's so curious about the pace of life that she doesn't look where she's going and bumps straight into a man coming out of the shop with a handful of biscuits. He's taller than her, sporting a jacket and a brown cap. After apologizing for causing the collision, Lara takes the opportunity to ask him whether there's JoJo's Coffee in town, as that's her favorite brand, and coincidentally also the client she just signed the deal with. The stranger scoffs at the question, clearly not impressed with the idea of a chain store, and the interaction sours somewhat between them. He lets her know there's a good tea place in town, but she declines, more interested in getting her Java beans, and he leaves, calling her Java over his shoulder. Nonplussed, Lara heads in and picks up her coffee, before encountering a dog walker on her way out. She asks for directions to her destination, and the girl lets her know that Vivienne's tea shop is just up the road. When Lara arrives, she finds the tea shop is thriving with activity, not what she expected at all. It's a cozy little spot with beautiful gardens out front, catching the sunlight and turning it into a blissful haven of tranquility. She finds Daphne inside, her aunt's friend and employee, who greets her with a giant hug. Lara is overwhelmed, not having seen her aunt in a very long time, and politely declines Daphne's offer of tea, stating that she isn't a tea person. Daphne is visibly disappointed that Lara is so different from Vivienne, but doesn't voice it. Just then, the handsome stranger from earlier enters the shop. Daphne introduces him as Matt Slater, one of Vivienne's closest friends. Lara raises an eyebrow, and Matt quickly responds that they were more like colleagues who got along very well. He owns the local garden center and was her supplier of most of her herbal tea leaves as well as the flowers out the front of the shop. He always used to come in every morning to have tea with her, and misses her very much. Lara is a bit overwhelmed as she didn't know her Aunt Vivienne very well, nor did she ever come to visit, so she didn't know about any of the people in her life. Matt sits down just as Vivienne's lawyer arrives, to Lara's surprise, and the lawyer explains that Matt is a co-executor with Lara. She was unaware that Vivienne had appointed anyone else, so she's taken aback, but takes it in her stride, sitting down to go through the estate's assets with him. The lawyer explains that the house and tea shop are to be sold and the proceeds will go to charity to establish the Kissing Falls Bird Sanctuary, per Vivienne's wishes. Daphne relates that she and her husband have been running the charity for years alongside Vivienne, and they have been wanting to set up the sanctuary for just as long. They can't afford to buy the tea shop, though, so Matt suggests that his brother, who works in real estate, could find a buyer for them. Lara is impressed with how quickly everything seems to be getting sorted, and signs the papers she's presented with. She declines a call from the office, causing Matt to roll his eyes, exasperated that she's being bothered by her work even when she's dealing with personal matters. Lara apologetically explains that she's in marketing, and it's due to the new campaign. Before they finish up, the lawyer hands Lara a note written by Vivienne, containing her last wishes. Lara reads it out. It's addressed to both of them. In it, she expounds on her regret that she never had any children of her own, but relays her fondness for both of them, that they were like a son and daughter to her, and Lara feels terrible that she didn't get to know her aunt better as an adult. She reads on and finds that Vivienne mentions the Golden Cup, an award given by the International Council of Tea Sommeliers in London. It's a prestigious label that's the equivalent of Michelin stars in the tea world, and Vivienne tried for it every year before she got ill, but was never successful. Vivienne closes the letter by asking whether, in the absence of a sale, Lara or Matt would be willing to take over and accomplish her dream for her. However, Matt is busy with the garden center and Lara has her job in New York, so they are not able to do so. Daphne shrugs as Lara closes the letter, feeling a strange pang that the dreams of the aunt she never really knew will be left unfulfilled. Matt offers to take her over to the house so they can sort it out ready for the sale, and Lara agrees, but needs to check in with work first. It's Joel asking for her input, but she just tells him to handle it himself, dismissive in the face of discovering more about her aunt. He puts the phone down with a lingering look, dissatisfied, but doesn't argue. It seems like he misses her more than a colleague strictly should. Meanwhile, Lara and Matt arrive at Vivienne's house. Lara recalls being there as a child, running around the garden, and imagining she was lost in a forest. It's a far cry from the small apartment in California where she grew up in. They discuss Vivienne's love of her overgrown garden, and her life in England when she was younger at the Royal Tea Academy. Just then, Matt's brother Steve approaches them. Upon introduction, Steve lets slip that Matt used to be in Brooklyn. Delighted, Lara comments on it, but Matt quickly shuts her down, leaving her confused as to why he dislikes the city so much. Steve, realizing his mistake, quickly moves on to discussing the house, and he informs them it's going to need some work before it's ready to sell. As Lara takes the keys to look inside, Steve teases his brother about Lara's beauty, but Matt gruffly denies any involvement with her. They're not compatible because she's a city girl. Matt catches up to Lara, who inquires as to whether Vivienne ever told him why she didn't marry. She seems to have regretted not having children, but she never dwelled on not having a husband. Matt recalls a time when Vivienne spoke about London, and she perhaps met someone there, but when she returned she never mentioned him again. Lara is intrigued by her aunt's mystery, but doesn't comment further. They discuss how they're going to divide up the work on the house, and Matt offers to do it himself so they don't have to hire anyone. Lara feels guilty because she wants to help but is torn by the fact she has to be back in the city ASAP. Eventually, she agrees to stay just for a couple of days and help out, as they're co-executors and she wouldn't feel right leaving him with all the work. Matt agrees to let her stay at the house, and so with that, their unlikely friendship begins. The next morning, Lara stops in at the tea shop to say hello to Daphne before she starts clearing out Vivienne's office. A young girl named Amy bursts in on them, claiming it's an emergency. She spouts off a story about how her boyfriend is never going to propose to her, and her mom told her about a special tea that she got from Vivienne's tea shop which worked like a love potion. Daphne is startled, and upon inspecting the packaging, remembers that the recipe was called Moonglow, but they haven't made that tea in years. Lara tries to make the girl understand that it's not a love potion, but when Amy talks about the story behind it and how her father proposed to her mother after drinking it, the clever woman gets an idea. She takes Amy's details and tells her they'll try to recreate the blend. Daphne is flabbergasted, watching her go, and berates Lara, asking her why she promised to make the blend when they don't even know the recipe. Matt comes in at that moment, as Lara explains that this could be their chance to win Vivienne's golden cup. If they have a special blend with a story behind it, and if the recipe is that good, then it might have a shot. The marketeer in her is excited by the idea of having such a beautiful story to tie to the recipe. Matt is unconvinced, and she teases him about not believing in love. She dreams up a whole campaign to accompany it, naming it Together Forever Tea. Daphne goes to check the recipes in the back as Matt is reluctantly forced to admit that if they could recreate the special blend, it might have a shot at working. Before long, Daphne returns with the box, and Lara triumphantly pulls out an old recipe for the Moonglow tea. However, their victory is short-lived as they discover that the blend requires the petals of the Kissing Falls rose, a specific type of flower that went extinct over 20 years ago. That's why they can't make it anymore. Matt explains the theory behind the herbal tea to a clueless Lara, that the notes need to be perfectly balanced: the base, the fruit, and the floral. Without the three exact ingredients, they can't recreate the taste. Lara, though, is undeterred, driven by the motivation to fulfill her late aunt's dream, knowing Daphne once tasted it a long time ago, and between the three of them, they can trial and error until they manage to find a substitute for the lost flower. Matt takes her through his garden center to find roses of a similar genus to the extinct variety, as Lara explains her life and career. She wants to work for nonprofits, but used her marketing job as a path into the city so she could gain experience. It turns out they share an interest in literature. Lara teases Matt about his friendship with Vivienne and he laughs it off, explaining that she was originally his mom's friend, but she was just so easy to talk to that he couldn't help but want to learn more from her. He relates some advice she gave him when he went through a bad breakup, and they discover that they have a shared experience of Vivienne when she was nursing an injured owl, Mr. Magoo, back to health. Matt was the one who originally found it. Lara is startled to find that Matt has been so close to Vivienne all this time. Back at the shop, though, their blend isn't working out. Daphne believes the base note is also wrong, as they import nettles in bulk now, so it doesn't have the same taste as when Vivienne used to pick them by hand. Matt remembers a patch of nettles up by the falls after which the town is named, and offers to take Lara up there. She silences a notification from Joel on her phone and agrees with a smile, ignoring her colleague in favor of spending more time with the man she's getting to know and learning more about the town her aunt loved. Daphne watches the pair go with a knowing smile. They explore the nettle patch, which is the site that will one day become the bird sanctuary Vivienne always wanted to create. Matt begins uprooting a nettle plant when Lara stops him, concerned that he shouldn't be taking the whole thing. He reassures her that he's qualified, but is impressed by her knowledge of the camper's code about not taking things from the environment. She shrugs it off, pleased with his praise, and admits she only went camping once, casually adding that it was at her bachelorette party. Startled, Matt almost drops the trowel, as he didn't know she was married. He seems taken aback and disappointed. Lara hastily clears up the misunderstanding. She and her fiancé didn't work out. They were a bad fit, and she thinks she's lucky to have realized it before it was too late. Matt seems relieved, though he tries not to show it, and the pair return to the easy atmosphere they had before. It seems that without knowing it, they're already beginning to gravitate together. Lara asks about how Kissing Falls got its name. Matt tells her the story, which is actually of his ancestors. A couple fought on their wedding day, and their families tricked them into coming up to the falls, where they made up and got back together. Lara loves the idea of the story, and even more that Matt genuinely believes its truth. That night, she tries calling the International Council of Tea Sommeliers, but when she tries to introduce herself, they won't even listen and hang up on her immediately. The next day, Steve approaches Matt as he's pulling up different roses to try for the tea. He's already got an interested potential buyer for the house. Matt is surprised by the suddenness, as he hadn't thought it would happen so quickly. Steve teases him again about spending time with Lara, and Matt once again denies any involvement with her beyond the necessities of organizing the will and getting the golden cup. It's written all over his face that he's holding himself back because he's afraid that she'll go back to the city where he can't follow. Meanwhile, Lara comes across a set of old letters tied up in ribbon. They're all addressed to Vivienne, dozens of them, unopened and stored away. She's pondering about them when Matt arrives with paintbrushes. They open one of the letters just to see who it's from, unwilling to invade Vivienne's privacy, but wanting to know who the mystery sender is. However, it's just signed N. Perplexed, the pair puzzle over what kind of letters Vivienne would have kept but not opened for so many years, and they come to the conclusion it may have been her lover in London. However, Matt wants to get on with painting, so they leave the letters for later. During the painting, it's becoming clear that the pair have reciprocal feelings, as Lara can't keep her eyes off Matt. When the job's done, they sit together on the freshly painted porch, lightly flirting with each other, until the atmosphere gets tense between them. Lara decides to go for it, and tries to lean in for a kiss, but Matt swiftly breaks the tension, looking away and leaving her feeling embarrassed. Things become incredibly awkward between them, and Lara kicks herself as Matt makes a hasty exit, believing she's overstepped and ruined things. Later that evening, she goes on a jog up to the falls, breathing in the country air and enjoying the wide-open woodland. She's starting to remember how much she loved the town as a girl, and she thinks again about Matt's story about his ancestors and the history of the town's name. When she arrives back at the house, she has a brainwave and pulls a photo of Vivienne off the wall, remembering that it was taken during her Royal Tea Academy days. Bingo, on the back is written, with Nigel in Norfolk, 1965. It seems they've found the name of their mystery letter writer. Excited, she heads to the tea shop to show Matt her discovery. Matt, though, doesn't remember Vivienne ever having mentioned him. Daphne recalls that the head of the International Council of Tea Sommeliers is called Nigel Newberry, and they all wonder whether he could be the Nigel that Vivienne fell in love with. The reason she never got the golden cup all these years is that he's bitter that she left him. Lara resolves to ask him directly and drafts a letter using all her marketing expertise, letting the council know about the new tea blend and appealing to Nigel directly. Matt points out that the blend isn't ready yet, but Lara is optimistic that by the time Nigel replies, they'll have it done. As the two prepare to journey further afield to find more exotic roses, Lara receives another call from Joel. She takes it this time, aware she's unable to keep ignoring him. He badgers her about coming back to the office, because they need to work on the new material for JoJo's. Lara deflects, though, and the call doesn't end well. She's so frustrated with Joel that she doesn't notice Matt stealing her coffee flask and replacing it with tea during the call. She takes a swig, and at Daphne and Matt's expectant faces, rolls her eyes in exasperation as she realizes the trick they've played on her. She has to admit, though, that she likes it. As the pair celebrate Lara becoming a tea drinker, Miriam, the dog walker Lara met when she arrived, bursts in, panicking that Rufus, her dog, has run off. Lara immediately volunteers to help look, and Matt goes with her. They make conversation as they walk, and Matt admits that he was very close to his ex's dog and felt so bad when he had to leave it that he's never got one of his own. They find Rufus behind a tree and bring him home safe and sound, to Miriam's delight. Lara feels proud and happy that she was able to help, and is beginning to discover that she enjoys small-town life more than she thought she would. As they drive over to the next town to look for the roses, Matt quizzes Lara about Joel. She tells Matt about her work in JoJo's campaign, and he voices his disdain for the chain, because their tea is terrible. This begins a long lecture about the proper preparation of tea, which Lara listens to with good humor. When they arrive, they're looking around the center when they run into a young woman who immediately looks uncomfortable upon seeing Matt. He introduces her to Lara as Cheryl, and asks after someone called Megan, who is traveling all over the world, and Alois, who is also doing well. Cheryl's eyes narrow when he asks about Alois. It turns out she's his ex Megan's sister. The awkwardness is palpable and soon Cheryl leaves, prompting Lara to ask Matt about his relationship. Matt seems down, so she tries to cheer him up by reassuring him that it wasn't true love, because if it was, he wouldn't feel so bitter about it. That's what she tells herself about her ex, too, and it's why she hasn't given up hope. Later, she's relaxing on the porch of Vivienne's house when Matt drives up to her, dressed up in a nice shirt, and informs her shyly that it's movie night on Friday nights, and they have an open-air theater in the town center. She happily accepts the invitation, and it turns out he's prepared a picnic as he lays down a blanket for them to sit on. She tries to focus on the movie, but can't bring herself to tear her eyes away from the man she's slowly beginning to fall in love with. The next day, Nigel Newberry responds, but the answer isn't good. He simply refuses to hear anything about the matter concerning Vivienne. This confirms their suspicions that he's the Nigel from her letters, but it doesn't solve the quandary. How are they going to get the council to give Vivienne's blend a golden cup when the chairman won't even read their emails? Lara comes up with the idea that they need to appeal to the other members of the council, because it's unfair that he's been holding Vivienne back from getting the award because of a personal matter. However, it looks like he has more influence than they thought, so Lara resorts to calling his assistant and pretending to be from the Royalty Academy. They find out that he's currently staying in the Willingdon Hotel in New York, and elated, Lara heads back to the city to find him and convince him to try their new blend. Matt protests that they don't even have it ready yet, but in her excitement, Lara won't be stopped. She heads straight to the hotel and waits for him in the lobby. When she sees him sit down in the restaurant, she follows him to his table. Initially, he's irritated, telling her to leave him alone, clearly still bitter about the way they parted. He says in no uncertain terms that if Vivienne has had a change of heart, it's too late. However, once Lara tells him that she's passed away, his whole demeanor changes. Lara asks him whether he was the one who blocked her aunt from receiving the award, and Nigel responds defensively that Vivienne chose to have a life of insignificance, and that the cup isn't given to those who are living small. Disappointed, Lara leaves the bundle of unopened letters on the table, and Nigel looks down in surprise as she departs without another word. It's clear she's going to get nothing more from him. Meanwhile, Steve is showing people around the house, but he hasn't had any offers yet. Matt arrives as he's seeing a couple off, and asks his brother out of the blue whether he was in the wrong in his relationship with Megan. He's been thinking about it ever since he met Cheryl, and wondering whether he's the one at fault for how they ended. Steve reassures him that he tried his best to stay in the city with her, but it just didn't work out. Matt, though, is still unconvinced. It's playing on his conscience because he feels like he didn't try hard enough, and now he wants something with Lara, but he's scared to reach out and take it in case the same thing happens. He doesn't voice any of this to Steve, he doesn't have to. His brother warns him not to be defeatist, and allows Matt to walk up to the house, still lost in his thoughts. Matt is checking the fence posts in the garden when he finds a single rose among the hedges. He's shocked to find that it's the Kissing Falls rose, thought to be extinct. Vivienne had kept a single one in her overgrown garden all this time. He looks up at the sky in wonder. As Daphne is closing up shop, Lara returns from New York, irritated after her encounter with Nigel. She imparts the bad news about Nigel standing in the way of the Golden Cup, and in turn, Daphne tells her that Matt came by and had something he wanted to say to her earlier. She smiles knowingly, and Lara throws caution to the wind and asks her about Megan, insecure about how Matt might feel for his ex-girlfriend. Daphne shrugs the question off, because Vivienne never thought that Megan was right for Matt. They wanted different things out of life, and it was always obvious to everyone around them. It just took Matt a while to see it. Just then, the man himself bursts into the shop, overflowing with excitement to tell Lara about the rose. She tells Matt the bad news about Nigel, and he's shocked and pleased to hear that she defended Kissing Falls and the life Vivienne chose to have. Lara shrugs his praise off, but is secretly happy, and beginning to feel like she might want to choose that life for herself, too. Matt takes her to show her the rose, and although she's thrilled that it exists, she's sad that Nigel will never agree to drink their blend. Matt shrugs off her dejection, though, pointing out that they can just make it for Amy, which was the whole reason they initially came across the idea. Lara is flabbergasted at him buying into what he called romantic nonsense, because despite himself, perhaps he started to believe in the magic of the tea. She teases him about it, but with a straight face, he gathers his courage. Things have changed since he made that comment, but just as he's about to tell Lara why, just when he gets halfway through asking her out to dinner, a car horn sounds nearby, jerking them out of the moment. Joel pulls up in a Jeep, interrupting them, and oblivious, states that he brought the art mock-ups for the campaign, since Lara wouldn't go to the city. Unable to do anything, since he's her senior and he's just shown up out of the blue, Lara invites him to come along to their dinner, and Matt is forced to agree. The dinner is awkward, with Joel openly insulting the town, and Lara trying to defend it on Matt's behalf. Joel is shocked to hear Lara is drinking tea, but she sets him straight that it's Vivienne's tea she likes, and she and Matt have a moment when she jokingly suggests they pitch the idea of tea shops to JoJo's as a new chain. However, Joel once again interrupts by pulling her into work, making Matt feel deliberately left out. It's a tug-of-war between the two men who are vying for her attention, and Lara is left in the middle, trying to please everyone. The next morning, Lara finds Matt in the garden center, tending to the rose. He asks about Joel, and Lara apologizes for her colleague's behavior. Matt simply thanks her for defending Kissing Falls. They draw closer together as Lara realizes how special the town is to her, just as Matt becomes aware of how much he doesn't want Lara to leave. He cuts off the rose, declaring that the plant will bloom again next season, and hands it to her, ready to put in the tea. She takes it from him with a besotted smile, pleased that they were able to achieve the impossible together. At the tea shop, Amy is thrilled with the result, clutching the bag of Together Forever tea. She promises to let them know how it goes with her boyfriend and dashes out of the shop. Matt and Lara watch her go fondly, Matt still not fully believing in the power of the tea. Lara, though, catches his eye and claims that perhaps it's just about how tea can bring two people together. They share a long look, understanding that her words aren't about Amy. Later, they sit together at a table as Lara laments that the rose won't be ready for commercial production for a few years, so they won't be able to launch Together Forever tea as they'd hoped. With a heavy heart, Matt informs her that Steve has found a buyer for the shop, so it wouldn't matter anyway. It's not going to be a tea shop much longer. The moment is interrupted by the arrival of Nigel Newberry in his car. He has come to try the new blend, as he has decided not to let his bias get in the way of his decisions any longer. The group is stunned at his arrival and panics, not knowing what to do, because they gave all of the tea to Amy. Daphne frantically goes to call her and try to get some back, while Matt goes to the garden center to see if he can find any petals. Meanwhile, Lara explains the situation and takes Nigel to see Vivienne's house. While there, she asks him about why he came, in a moment of vulnerability. He sighs and explains that he read the letters back and realized that he was the one in the wrong. He expected Vivienne to give up everything for him without compromising at all. Lara reminds him that no matter what, Vivienne kept the letters, and that must mean something. Seeing the photo of Vivienne in the house, Nigel gets emotional. It's when Lara tells him she left her money to start a bird sanctuary, the shared passion she and Nigel had, that he ends up recounting the true ending of his and Vivienne's love story. As it turns out, she accepted his proposal, but only on the basis that they split time between England and Kissing Falls. He refused, and that led to their separation. He's beginning to realize how much of a fool he's been as he stares entranced at the photo. Right at the worst time, as always, Lara's phone starts to ring, and she steps away to answer it. This time, though, it's Daphne with good news. Amy is on her way to the tea shop with the Together Forever tea. They reconvene at Vivienne's and Amy shows off her brand new ring. They didn't even use the tea, he proposed before she could get to make it. They're pleased for her, but say goodbye quickly, aware of the urgency with which they need to serve Nigel. As Daphne presents him with the freshly brewed tea, Lara and Matt explain the whole story behind it. The tea was brewed to create the feeling of true love. Then the rose was wiped out, and they found it again in Vivienne's garden, almost like a miracle. Nigel prepares the tea, steeping it and sieving it, testing the scent and taste. Everyone watches with bated breath, and Nigel has to ask them all to stand back, as they're crowding him. After a moment, he pronounces that the tea is delightful, and he's going to recommend to the council that they award it the Golden Cup. Wild with joy, Daphne, Lara, and Matt dance and hug each other, Lara even kissing Nigel on the cheek in thanks. Shaking his head at the celebrations, Nigel loses himself in the taste of the tea, enjoying the last remaining link he has to the love of his life. Daphne prepares the last of the tea and leaves the pair to drink it in the tea shop as she heads home. Both are pleasantly surprised at the taste. They start to speak at the same time, and Lara urges Matt to go first. He takes a deep breath, about to try for a second time to admit how he feels about her, before once again, a phone interrupts the moment. This time, it's both of them. Lara's is a text from Joel which she ignores, but Matt's is from Steve, confirming the offer on the shop and letting them know that the buyer wants to meet them in the morning. The atmosphere is stifled, and despite Lara dropping hints that she wants Matt to ask her to stay, he doesn't pick up on it, still confused and too frightened to go after what he wants. He gets up and departs, leaving her disappointed, wishing they could somehow break the wall between them. She almost calls out to him, but she doesn't know what to say. She arrives back at Vivienne's that night and speaks to the photo of her aunt. She's so lost that she needs guidance on how she can move on with her life. The still photo offers no answers, though, and she heads to bed with a heavy heart. The following day, Steve presents Matt and Lara with the offer for the shop. It's twice what the shop is worth, and they're paying cash, which means they'll be able to get the bird sanctuary up and running as soon as possible. Lara has a moment of hesitation, unsure if this is really what they want to do, but she signs it anyway, and Matt follows her lead. She then asks Steve if she's able to buy the house, and Matt is shell-shocked, completely blindsided that Lara would want to move to Kissing Falls, stuttering that he wouldn't have a problem. As co-executor, Steve grins knowingly. Nigel arrives to say goodbye and reminds them he'll see them in London when they come to accept the Golden Cup. At that moment, though, Joel pulls up in his Jeep, ecstatic that the sale's gone through and attributing it to Lara's genius idea at dinner. Horrified, Lara looks at Matt, not realizing Joel had taken their joke seriously. They've just signed away Vivienne's to JoJo's. Nigel is troubled immediately because the Golden Cup is only for independent tea shops, and now that Vivienne's is a part of JoJo's, it will be disqualified. Everything is falling apart in one fell swoop. Lara is despairing, not knowing what to do. Matt turns on her, angry, as all of them realize that there's nothing that can be done. Steve can't rescind the contract, Nigel can't do anything about the rules of the council, and Joel can't get JoJo's to give it up. Heartbroken, Lara runs back inside, and Joel rushes after her, upset that he didn't realize he was doing anything wrong. Matt is stalking down the road, frustrated, when Nigel pulls up beside him and rolls down the window. It seems as though he has a word of advice for him. Meanwhile, Joel is trying to comfort Lara, apologizing again and again as she rants at him about how he's destroyed everything Vivienne worked for without even running it past her. He claims he wanted to surprise her. In desperation, he finally blurts out that she means a lot to him, and Lara realizes that all along, he's been doing it for her, because he likes her. She knows that her heart already belongs to Matt, though, even if things don't pan out between them, so she lets him down as gently as possible, and Joel sadly accepts her decision. He gives her an ultimatum, though, she needs to be back in the office today, or she shouldn't come back at all. In Nigel's car, Nigel asks Matt about the confrontation. Matt admits to the old man that he was wrong, he shouldn't have lashed out. He loves Lara, but it's not as simple as he wants it to be, and he can't find the answers. Nigel reminds him that it's very easy to lose the love of your life, and that it's necessary to take a risk sometimes to know whether it's right. Encouraged by his words, Matt realizes he needs to go back and apologize to Lara, to see whether she will take him back after what he said to her. Meanwhile, Lara is poring over the will, trying to find a way to get out of the sale. Daphne approaches her and points out that she and Matt are in a very similar situation to the one Vivienne and Nigel experienced all those years ago. Lara is skeptical. She and Matt are virtually strangers, and although she was thinking about buying the house on the spur of the moment when they were on top of the world, now, she's not sure she'd be welcome. Daphne sits down and reassures her that Vivienne's only dream wasn't the Golden Cup. She made Lara and Matt co-executors for a reason. This whole time, she's been pulling them together. This revelation makes Lara more determined than ever to fulfill her aunt's wishes, and she returns to poring over the document until she finally looks up, triumphant. She calls Steve to let him know that she's found a way out of it. The Bird Sanctuary Committee has to agree to the sale, according to the will. However, Daphne and her husband now form the entirety of the committee, and Daphne firmly objects. With a grin of relief, Steve lets her know he'll inform the purchaser that the deal is off. Daphne suggests Lara heads up to Kissing Falls to think about whether she wants to buy Vivienne's house, and in the meantime, forces Steve to text Matt and tell him to get up there too. They've done all they can, so now it's up to the two of them to figure out what they want. Up at the falls, the pair realize immediately they've been set up. She shares the good news about them getting out of the sale, and apologizes to Matt for ever getting Joel involved. Matt apologizes too, and the two of them are once again at a standstill. Lara shares that she'll be out of a job, waiting for Matt to make the next move. Finally, he manages to propose his idea. He uses funds from the garden center to buy out the tea shop, and they run it together, making the special Together Forever tea. Lara joins in with his idea, enthusiastically suggesting they make a social media campaign, and before long they're laughing, swept up in imagining it. Matt stops and nervously asks if this means she'll buy the house. In his first open admission, he offers to try getting used to New York, if it's what Lara wants. She refuses him, though, promising she's happy in Kissing Falls, and she wants them to stay there together, forever. The two of them kiss in front of the waterfall, excited about what the future will bring.